Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's my number 5 team in my 2025 NFL Deep Dive Series. It's the Referee Association's favorite team in the league, the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure to subscribe and like and leave your comments in the comment section below. Hit the hype button if you're watching on your mobile device, if it does pop up as an option for you. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. It's still in beta testing apparently, but it does help me out. All those things helps me out, and I appreciate you guys for doing that. The other thing that helps out the Kansas City Chiefs is the referees. No, we're not going to have that kind of video. We won't. We're going to talk about the substance of it. They have one of the best coaching staffs in the entire league, if not the best. Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, throwing Matt Nagy in there, I guess, but whatever he is. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, no matter what anyone wants to say, Patrick Mahomes. They have one of the best tight ends still in the league, despite what people want to say about his dating options and his vaccination status. That's Travis Kelce. Rashee Rice needs to learn how to stop breaking the law, but he's a solid wide receiver. They got lots of speed on the offense. The offensive line is a bit in flux here. They traded away Joe Thuney, one of their best offensive linemen. Kingsley Suamataia seems to be the one to replace him, now converting from tackle to guard. That's going to be an interesting transition to watch throughout the year. They are the best coached defense in the entire league, with one of the most interesting and deep rotations on the defensive line that, other than Chris Jones, though, lacks that true high-end talent. We'll see what George Karlaftis can come up with this year. That's going to be something to watch. Then you got the linebacking group, one of the best linebacking groups in the entire league in terms of its depth. A lot of teams got 2 linebackers that are starting quality, that are high-level players. This team's got 3. The secondary is phenomenal, led by Trent McDuffie. We'll get to all that. It is a team that seems to be perhaps maybe aging out. Maybe it's a little bit of people just kind of sick and tired of them to a degree. I've heard that argument before. There definitely is some issues of favoritism, it seems. It's kind of obvious at some points. I don't like to blame it all on that, but there is something to that, I think. So we'll give you that. We'll give you that to the Chief haters out there. But we got to start with the real, crown jewel of this organization, of this team, and that is the coaching staff led by Andy Reid. It's just tough to find a better coaching staff than what this group has. It's why it allows them to sustain all the success that they've had. They have Andy Reid. He's the best head coach in the entire league. He's the one that has seen the most sustained success, high-level success out of any of the head coaches available out there of all 32. He's everything that Mike Tomlin has been, everything that Jim Harbaugh is going to be, everything John Harbaugh is, just with lots of Super Bowls and lots of great player development. And he's such a great coach, and he has such a great culture built here, and it allows there to be the level of turnover that there is sort of surrounding these pillars of the organization. Whether it be, being able to just get rid of Eric Bieniemy as an offensive coordinator and bring back Matt Nagy, who comes in as my 21st ranked offensive coordinator. Or whether it's being able to just lose, Willie Gay on the defense, or Charvarius Ward, or whoever on that side of the ball, because you have Steve Spagnuolo, who's going to be able to scheme something up that's just ruthless, and he's the best defensive coordinator for me in the league. Just such a level of consistency from the defense on so many different things, on all 3 levels, player development in the secondary, scheme, and just unpredictability and all that. He's just mastered that in his time, and it's such an advantage to have a defensive coordinator like him on your staff, because nobody's hunting him down for a head coaching position. Nobody's attempting to do that. Nobody is, they're not going to go after him because of his age. And I don't know that he's necessarily seeking a head coaching position at this stage in his life, or this stage in his coaching career. I think being settled in as one of the best defensive coordinators in the entire league is such an advantage for him to have, and such an advantage for this organization to have, because they're just going to keep paying him. And he's going to keep developing these guys, and developing great linemen, and developing great corners, and great safeties, and great linebackers the way that he has. And he's going to be able to hide so many of the deficiencies that they have in their skill sets as well. He's just so good at that. I am concerned about, how much rope they're going to give Matt Nagy from an offensive coordinator perspective, because you want kind of Andy Reid to be running all this. But we also saw Eric Bieniemy had a lot of success with Andy Reid, and Matt Nagy's not had nearly the amount of success. He has been operating with significantly less talent than what Eric Bieniemy's rosters had. But I still think when you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Travis Kelce, and you have that, some good offensive linemen that you have out there, Matt Nagy should be a very positive contributor and get right back to being, in that middle tier of offensive minds in the league at this type of this level, this position of offensive coordinator. But again, I don't foresee there being a situation where teams are going to be beating down the door to try and get Matt Nagy to be a head coach. So I feel like this is a situation where they have so much stability in the coaching staff now. It really comes down to Andy Reid and him just having such a firm grasp on what he wants the culture of the organization to be, on what he wants the overall attitude of the organization to be, what he wants the week-to-week strategy to be, and how he wants the schemes to line up. And the marriage between him and these coaches and these players has just been textbook as perfect as it gets. Because almost every year there's this way of writing off Kansas City, and Kansas City's not going to be anything this year, and this is the year that they collapse. And then they just keep finding ways to win. They keep finding ways to get wins in the playoffs and win key games and win important games. They'll give up a stinker every now and then. Last year they needed a little bit more luck to have the success that they had. But overall, it was because of what Andy Reid brings to the organization and what he brings in terms of experience and leadership and guidance to the players and even the coaching staff that allows them to probably be the highest floor team in the entire league. Even though, they're not here ranked number one. They are a top 5 team. But their floor, I feel, is just so high. Even in this tough division that they're going to be playing in with Denver and the Chargers and the Raiders, those are 3 head coaches, in Harbaugh and Peyton and Carroll, that they're really difficult to outcoach. And I feel like Andy Reid is probably the only one in the entire league who's capable of outcoaching all 3 of those guys. There's very few coaches out there that can outcoach basically every coach in the entire league. And I think Andy Reid is that guy who's going to be able to do that this year. And I think that's going to really help them as the division gets harder, as the conference gets harder, as players start to age out on your roster, as you start to incorporate new players into the starting lineups. You just lost Joe Thuney that you traded away to the Bears. So now Kingsley Suamatia is going to be coming in and playing guard from the looks of it. He needs to get some development there. You drafted Josh Simmons in the first round. You're hoping that he can be 100% healthy and then turn into the left tackle that you're hoping he would be, drafting him in the first round. Travis Kelce, is he on his way out? That's why you have Noah Gray and Jared Wiley there. What's happening with Rashee Rice? There's a lot of turbulence within this roster, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that in any other situation would probably be causing a lot more concern than I think what it is around the league here. And it's all really because of Andy Reid. He's the dad in the room. He's the adult in the room. He's that pillar of stability that keeps this motor running. And this is what's going to make this team one of the better teams in the league for as long as Andy Reid is basically the coach here. He's figured it out. He's mastered it. He worked out long ago all the deficiencies that he had in Philadelphia, and now it's almost automatic at this point. It's like second nature to this guy. He's as much of a football savant as you can come across, and it's a privilege for all these coaches, all these faces that you see here, from Matt Nagy to Steve Spagnuolo to Todd Pinkston even. The wealth of knowledge that they're able to acquire, even some of them at the stage of the career that they're in, long-term, short-term, whatever, they're all coming out significantly better than what they are coming in. I'm very, very surprised at how little of the Andy Reid coaching tree we've seen expand off of him in recent years. So I don't know when that's going to change, but there should be that change coming up relatively soon because these rosters have been performing really well. There's been rarely deficiencies in these position groups, and at some point somebody's going to have to try and get off this. Like, nobody can think that it's all Andy Reid, maybe except me. That's right. Still got no ads. But you can help me with that. Slide the comment section thing over. Hit the hype button if you're on your mobile device and the option is there for you. And then leave a comment in the comment section below. Helps with the algorithms. Hit the thumbs up. Another thing that helps with the algorithms, pushes this video out. Even if you think I'm an idiot, just hit the thumbs up. Let other people tell me I'm an idiot. Tell me I'm an idiot in the comment section, but leave a thumbs up and subscribe. And then maybe this time next year, this will be an ad read rather than me just cutting in and, begging and pleading like the pathetic person I am. Another pillar for the success of this team is Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback. Now, say what you want. To me, this guy's still a top 3, top 4 quarterback in the whole league. It's a tiresome argument to hear people say that he isn't at this stage. He hasn't had these like massive statistical outputs like we're used to seeing, but the offense has kind of evolved over the last couple of years where he's only had to be a certain type of player for it to have the success that it's had. And they've had tons of success. It's inarguable the success that they've had. Now, from his own personal statistical output, only 18 big-time throws, so he's not pressing the ball down the field as much as he maybe was earlier in his career. Now, a lot of that has to do with the bodies that they have. I think now with Rashee Rice coming back, at least for a little bit, we'll see more instances of the ball going down the field. But when you have guys like Hollywood Brown and you have guys like Xavier Worthy, who are these speed demons, but they're also small. So them getting into these like deep one-on-one coverages and all that kind of stuff just isn't a thing. They usually are using them in a way where they're getting the ball into their hands quickly in those short to intermediate areas where Patrick Mahomes still executes at such a high level. Now, he has a 77.1 adjusted completion percentage, which is pretty good. You'd like to see the turnover-worthy plays come down a bit, but that's also him just kind of forcing the ball downfield against guys who, are these smaller receivers. Like, there's not these, like, big body threats on this roster, really. I think adding Jalen Royals and I think bringing back Rashee Rice does help out with that. Because I think he runs a really good play-action game, which is odd because we just covered the Green Bay Packers who have, like, this elite-level running back. What you're going to see from Kansas City is they don't really have that here. They got, like, very much a running back by committee type of style, even with a guy like Pacheco on the roster, who had some success in his rookie season, but kind of just didn't really sustain it as a top-level running back. But somehow the play-action game is so good because he's able to do what we just talked about Jordan Love not being able to do, which he gets his eyes downfield right away. He's able to identify so many things pre-snap that even when he does have that back turn for that split second during the play-action process, he still kind of is able to more easily anticipate where everyone's going to be anyway. So if there is a blitz that's coming, for example, he's going to be able to pick that apart, which is why he does so well against the blitz. He even does really well when he's pressured because he understands he's so in tune with what this offense is. He's so in tune with the players around him. The football IQ is just so elite that he understands where everyone's supposed to be. He understands the timing of every single individual player that is on this roster, new, veteran, whatever, depth guy, starter. He has that down. So he's able to throw with a level of anticipation, even when he's pressured, into those areas of the field with such pinpoint accuracy because he knows exactly where that ball needs to be. And the guys are coached so well that they run all their routes the exact same way every single time. He also has this relationship with Travis Kelce where, like, they're just constantly on the same page. They're at a stage right now where it's like they don't even have to signal to each other. It's just sort of understood at this point what the other one is going to be doing and why they're going to be doing it. And it's just making this offense such a well-oiled machine. And, somehow, the people, box score watchers, just start beating up on Patrick Mahomes for not being like a 5,000-yard passer like he was that first time that we saw him. But he's still going to go out there. He's still going to pick a defense apart. He's still going to work the pre-snap game as good as any quarterback in the entire league. He's going to be able to put the ball at all three levels, at all areas of the field with accuracy. It's just a matter of having guys that can get separation and having guys on the offense that, these weapons that can get open. Because it's another one of those rosters where there isn't like this elite outside wide receiver, this elite true number one, like actual wide receiver that you see on teams like Minnesota, that you see on teams like Cincinnati, for example, where they have like these juggernaut number ones. This group is, almost like a borderline receiver by committee group that we've seen a couple times now this year. That's why they come in at number 17 for me. There's just not a lot of true, like, high-level excitement to write home about here with this group. They're very much like this middle-of-the-pack group that everyone has their specific role, and everyone does it well. You're just looking for somebody to be like this true game breaker. Kelce gets a high grade because he's Kelce and because he's always going to be there and execute, but he's not at that stage anymore where he's going to just be the guy that takes over a game for your offense. You'd expect that to hopefully be Rashee Rice, who missed all of last season with that knee injury, who's like borderline about to miss this season because he doesn't know how to not stay out of legal trouble. But if he ends up playing for a majority of the season, then he's going to be that guy who you're going to hope can break out as that number one receiver. Because I'm not sure that any of these other guys really have the true, like, measurables to be that. Because you have Xavier Worthy, but he's like this smaller, like, just super fast guy. He's not going to win any contested catches for you. He still has drop issues to some degree. He isn't a particularly great route runner. A lot of what he does and where he executes really well is when he gets the ball in his hands quickly, so he's able to use his speed because he gets to top speed faster than most people. He just doesn't have a lot of these like moves at the line to get a good release. So if he gets jammed up, it's pretty much game over for him. But I think that's why he works so well in the short areas and even in the screen game, is because he's able to work off maybe if he's got a more of a cushion in those short routes, he's going to get open. He's going to get to that soft spot in the zone really fast. He's going to sit properly. Mahomes is going to be able to identify him. But you'd expect a guy with his speed to be able to work a lot better down the field in those deep and intermediate areas, and that's just not the case, especially in those intermediate areas, because that's where you're going to get a lot of the contested catch opportunities, and he's just not a contested catch guy. He's not going to pull those off very often, if at all. Even deep down the field, if he's not blown by a safety, the safety stays over the top of him, there isn't a whole lot that he's able to do in that case. He's not a very three-dimensional player. That's why he comes in as a 79 grade. Doesn't even come in the 80s, because he's very much just one-dimensional as it stands right now. Now, do you put him in situations where he does become a better route runner, but it potentially slows him down? Now, he was brought in to be your Tyreek Hill, and he's already proven to not be that. I'm not sure he has the capabilities to do that, because his run after the catch, though it's a majority of his yards, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that Tyreek level second gear, to get to, where it just feels like Worthy's constantly the Energizer Bunny, where Tyreek Hill was able to gear it down and gear it back up, like in the midst of a run. It seems like Xavier Worthy just gets to top speed and he can't stop. He's sort of like Luis Mendoza from Mighty Ducks 2, where he just can't stop skating. He has no brakes. He's all gas, no brakes. Jacob Fatu with it. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean he's not a good player. He's not a good asset to have in this offense. I just think that his size and his inability and him not being like Mr. Agility, Mr. Moves, Mr. Shiftiness does limit what they can do with him in the offense. And it does limit him from being like the Tyreek Hill replacement that I think they were wanting him to be. And I think the same can be said for Hollywood Brown to a large degree as well. I think Hollywood Brown sort of fell into that same category. They did pick up Jalen Royals, who I like coming out of Utah State. We'll see how much playing time he ends up getting. But I think in this offense, because there is so many, everyone's has a role. It's just a bunch of role players for the most part in the wide receiver room. That it does open up opportunities for Jalen Royals here that maybe wouldn't have opened up for him so early on if he had gone to another team. So there is that working in Royals' favor. They have Juju Smith-Schuster, sort of like this known commodity for Patrick Mahomes, like a veteran guy who can sort of come in and sort of plug and play. You know, Tyquan Thornton, he's just another speed demon who's like this deep over-the-top threat who sort of falls into the same category as Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. They're all sort of redundant with one another here. Nico Remigio is just, I don't know that he makes the team at all. You get to Travis Kelce, he's just, tried and true. Tried and true starting tight end, 97 catches last year, only had 823 yards, so he didn't really do a lot of the downfield work that we're used to seeing from him. He didn't do a lot of the run after the catch that we were used to seeing from him, even though he still had such a high level of success. He only had 4 drops, a 4% drop rate. Most of his work came in the short to intermediate area, still was considerably good downfield in the deep areas, but he was very much like this sort of just catch, secure the ball, and maybe lost a half a step, from the looks of it. I think that is where he's sort of falling in here. I'd like to see him maybe play a lot more inline traditional tight end this season and see if that doesn't really change up the type of matchups he's getting, maybe open up a couple more opportunities for him in these short to intermediate areas if that's where he's really going to be operating from this point forward in his career. But also there's this thing where he did make a comment about distractions and him feeling distracted and him, all these other things going on in his life basically stopping him from producing at a high level. And now this can go one of two ways. It could continue on that way and it could be him just a built-in excuse for why he's not going to produce the way we're used to seeing Travis Kelce produce over the last decade. Or it's him sort of being like, yeah, I know what's going on. It's time to buckle down. And I do anticipate this being Kelce's last season in the league. I don't think that he plays after this year. And I do think that from his perspective, just sort of the way he talked about the distractions and everything, that this is the year he might want to go out with a bang. Go out, like the gunslinger type of a thing, like I still got it, right off into the sunset. I feel like that is more akin to what he would want to do, just sort of throw it in people's faces so he has something to talk about in his podcast, like how he went out. Sort of like what his brother does or doesn't have. I think that that's really going to be the case. So that's why I kind of rank him still at 90 in the 90s. It's because I just anticipate him coming out and playing with his hair on fire. I think that's just his personality that I'm gathering, and and they do have some good guys behind him with Noah Gray and Jared Wiley. They're not exactly these high-level replacement guys, but I think they're both good enough that they can get some playing time as well. If Kelce, isn't this every down tight end anymore, which he may not be, even if I do think he's going to produce at a high level. So maybe they get into some 12 personnel with this system and get Pacheco and his sort of run through the wall style, get him going a lot more. But, I think they've also produced a really good backfield in the receiving game in particular, where they have Pacheco and they have Elijah Mitchell now and they have Kareem Hunt there, who can all be assets on every single down. So it allows them to be a lot less predictable too. And you can throw a screen pass or a swing pass out to any one of these guys, and they're going to get out in space and they're going to be able to make some plays. So they have a huge advantage in that as well. So from just like a short, check down safety blanket type thing, they have that as well as any other team does in the entire league. They are very much a running back by committee group, so they do come in 27th-ish, 27th, 28th for me in terms of running back, because I don't feel like any of these backs are truly going to be the number one back on this team. I think it's going to be, for the most part, the top three guys, Pacheco, Mitchell, and Kareem Hunt. Like, they're going to be the ones getting the ball. 95% of the snaps are going to be split between the three of them. And then you can throw in Carson Steele and Brashad Smith and throw in some empty and all that kind of crap as well. But it's hard to predict which one of these guys is truly going to be the guy, because we've seen Elijah Mitchell really show up for the 49ers over the years before picking up those injuries. We've seen Kareem Hunt just, have those flashes of still being a guy. And even when they had all these injuries, Carson Steele came in, and it's like they didn't miss a beat from the running back perspective. Nothing about their scheme had to change. This guy just came in and played great ball. You want it to be Isaiah Pacheco, who last year had a grand total of, 80 carries? 310 yards, 1 touchdown. Just couldn't stay healthy. And I get that. And maybe that's why you want to go to more of a running back by committee thing here, because from his size to his running style, maybe it's not conducive for long-term health. Because Pacheco's that guy who, he runs like he's trying. He runs like a guy who's trying to get through a crowd of people that's trying to hold him back from beating the crap out of somebody. Like just violent flailing is like his running style, like the Kool-Aid Man, but with his arms flapping. Which is it's fun to watch, but it was fun to watch in his rookie year. Not so fun to watch in the years since, when it's sort of affected his health and his ability to be available to actually play, and how much it just kind of hasn't been sustainable long term for success either. He does only have 4 missed tackles missed. It's because he's not really trying to make people miss. And I think that's a problem, I think, for long term here. And I think Elijah Mitchell's sort of the opposite of that, which is why he's such a good complement here. But it's also an offense that has never really demanded there be like this true star number one running back for the team to have success. It sort of just has the system, and the system is the success. You have Patrick Mahomes running it from a quarterback role, and everyone else just sort of falls in line. Like it's just automatic. Which is why I look at a guy like Brashad Smith, who's sitting there as a rookie, and I'm going, if none of these running backs just burst early in the year, like have like a true like star-studded breakout couple games where they're looking like just world beaters, why wouldn't a Brashad Smith get playing time here? Now, it depends on how many running backs they're going to keep on the team. I know Carson Steele's written in as a fullback, so maybe that opens up a roster spot for Brashad Smith. Or maybe they just cut bait on Kareem Hunt. I wonder how they're going to manipulate this backfield to be able to sustain an offense, because there is the prospect that this offense, that teams are going to just play pass all game and force you to run. And what if you can't? What if you don't have the bodies to make the run game work? What if they can just play a general base defense or play a nickel defense and still be able to stop you and stop the run? So at what stage of this offense's progression from year to year does a running back become more important? Because it hasn't been, but it will be at some point. So you have to pretty much be prepared for that to be the point at some stage, and I don't know that they have the guys here where if that does become the point, that they're going to be able to sustain, because they are like kind of like a bottom 5 group compared to the rest of the league. Now the offensive line, they come in 23rd pass blocking, 14th run blocking, and so much of that is because they did trade away Joe Thuney. Now, if they didn't trade away Joe Thuney, they would have probably been top 15 in pass blocking and then easily top 10 in run blocking. But they do have Kingsley Suamatia coming in and replacing him as a starter, and I just don't know what he's going to give you. When he did get on the field, he didn't show you anything that was starting caliber. Now he's playing guard, where he was a tackle, because you brought in Josh Simmons, and you've brought in Jalen Moore, and you have Wanya Morris, you have Jawan Taylor, so you have all these tackles. Can Kingsley Suamatia play at a good enough level to not be a huge detriment to this overall offensive line's production? For them to be able to attack that area of the offensive line where you don't have a lot of experience now, because you do have rookie Josh Simmons, who is coming off a pretty brutal injury at Ohio State. He only had 158 snaps last year. When he had those 158 snaps, he took one penalty and gave up one pressure. No sacks. No hits. He kept Will Howard very upright. Now, that injury, his recovery from it, and how quickly he's going to be truly 100%, then having to shift to the level of professional football speed, playing against high-level defensive ends like Max Crosby and Nick Bonito and Khalil Mack, just in his division alone. Giving him an 82 is because I think he's a really, really great pass blocker coming into the NFL. But that injury could end up knocking him down to a much less desirable level of production and level of skill. So to have him and Kingsley Suamatia there on the same side of the field, that left side of the field, that blind side of Patrick Mahomes, could very quickly become a scary part of this offensive line, and not in a good way. It could become a very, very exploited part of the offensive line by some opposing defenses here, where they are going to really pick on those two guys moving forward, because why wouldn't you when you look at the other side of the line? It starts with Creed Humphrey, who's probably the best center in the entire league. So from a pre-snap shifts and all that, you're going to have this down, because on 708 snaps, he didn't give up a single sack last year. Only gave up 7 pressures. And it's the center position. I get it in pass pro, which, fine. But he's going to be there, and he's going to be doing a lot of helping out with Kingsley Suamatia. That's for sure. Even from a run blocking perspective, he comes in, he's an A+ zone blocker. Doesn't do too well in gap, but they don't demand that a whole lot. Only 33% of their snaps from the running game were in gap, of the 407 that he took. So a majority of the time, he's working out of the zone, and he's just elite in every single way. And his ability to help Patrick Mahomes in the pre-snap process, it creates this it's like 3 different levels now of exploiting an opposing team's defense, from Andy Reid to Patrick Mahomes to Creed Humphrey, and it's 3 really high-level guys doing it all. So it's just a huge advantage that this team has to have him there, and you have this great relationship with him and Mahomes, and he elevates this offense. He elevates Mahomes' ability pre-snap. He's got the offensive line with the right shifts all the time, but now that he's playing with a clear detriment to his left, right? He's got a clear detriment right there to his left in Kingsley Suamatia, so he's going to have to maybe do a little bit more favoring of that side of the line, which could hurt what he's able to do as an individual and open up opportunities in other areas for opposing defense. That's very true. Now, they have Trey Smith, who they needed to make a decision between Trey Smith and Joe Thuney. They went with the youth. So they kind of lost out on the pass blocking here, but they gained a lot in the run blocking. And that's, Trey Smith, one of the best run blocking players in the league, one of the best run blocking guards in the league. So to be able to sort of shift, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith there in that middle, running some inside zone here is really going to be a huge benefit for this group to be able to keep the offense functioning, keep them ahead of schedule. They got the right bodies in place here with these guys. So I'm very impressed with their decision, even though it does hurt them from a pass blocking perspective. It allows them to maybe play games that are going to be a lot shorter because they're going to be running the ball a lot more, which I'm not necessarily not a fan of, as long as their running backs can get their crap together, Because like we just talked about, if they execute the running back by committee strategy well, then this group is really going to perform well for them. Then you have Jawan Taylor at right tackle, and he's kind of just a guy who I feel is just going to be constantly competing with Jalen Moore, who they gave money to and now apparently isn't going to start. It was a huge mistake to pay Jalen Moore. I don't know why they did it. Wanya Morris has sort of been this like swing tackle for them for the last couple of years. I think pretty solid. But I think, they've sort of dedicated a lot of money in mediocrity also. So that's why I also like them paying Trey Smith, because it's about time they paid somebody that was really good, rather than just paying, Jawan Taylor and Jalen Moore and whoever else that's just, left tackles of the past as well that have just been brutally average at best, making top money. But I do think if Josh Simmons does hit, then you know what, Jawan Taylor does become a serviceable offensive lineman here. You don't want him to be your best tackle. And he's, for all intents and purposes, could be lining up to be their third best offensive lineman this year, which isn't a good sign, which is why this group comes in ranked how they are ranked. Though, if Kingsley Suamatia hits, if his transition to guard ends up being this significant success, then this whole offensive line gets transformed into something so significantly better. It becomes closer to what it would have been last year with Joe Thuney, which was just this elite level offensive line. So we'll see how that works out, but he really is the featured piece on this line that's going to, for the most part, make or break it along with Josh Simmons. So watch that left side of the offensive line this year, Chiefs fans, because it's the wild card. It's the wild card. So overall, this is my 17th ranked offense, which seems very low for the Kansas City Chiefs, but it is what it is. They're 6th in passing offense, 27th in run game, and Matt Nagy, offensive coordinator, doesn't really give them all that much of a boost at all. So they do just sort of sit there, 17, kind of smack dab in the middle, and it's a high floor offense. I do just have concerns about the heights they can truly reach with everything they have right now surrounding their quarterback. Now let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. This is a very intriguing group, and we'll start here with the defensive line. And this is truly a group that's it's just a rotation group. Outside of Chris Jones, this is a group that's just going to be a lot of mixing and matching and trying to find the right pieces that work, because they do have so many bodies who are all sort of just falling into the same category to their skill sets. Like their edge room. We start George Karlaftis, who I know that they're dedicating to be their edge number one, but he's never really played like one. He's had some good games, but he was 99th in pass rush win percentage. With 8 sacks last year, he took 830 snaps, 61 pressures. Does he take another step here and get into this true pass rushing edge number one? Because right now he sort of hovers around number 2 quality. But I know that he fits what they want to do. Because he's sort of this is sort of the wide receiver room all over again, where he has a specific skill set where he's able to fulfill a specific role for Spagnuolo that he can scheme around. But I don't really like him in the run defense. He was 75th in stops percentage, which for an end is kind of whatever. Almost a 13% missed tackle rate, which is whatever. He just wasn't overly impressive in how he set the edges. Plays got around him more often than they probably should. Play a little bit more disciplined out there would have been different. Then you look at Mike Dana, who is pretty much the polar opposite of Karlaftis. They're almost mirror images of one another, where Dana has really no pass rush upside here, but from a run defense standpoint is really good. Then you look at a bunch of the edge depth that they have. Felix Anudike-Uzomah, former first-round pick. He's sort of he's replacement level in both ways. Same thing can be said for the new rookie they got, Ashton Gillette, who I actually really like as a pass rusher. I think as a situational pass rusher, especially in the way Spagnuolo does pass rush, I think he can be a huge asset. A huge asset. Then you got Charles Omenu, who's another like version of Mike Dana. Him and Mike Dana, I think, are pretty much going to be competing for snaps amongst each other. They'll be going back and forth. That'll be the rotation there. And I think Karlaftis will be there with Anaduke, Uzoma, and Gillette. Like those three will be the ones competing for snaps on the other side. Even then, you get to the interior, and we'll wait on Chris Jones. We'll finish up with him. But Mike Pennell is like your early down, traditional run-stopping defensive tackle. The rookie Ormar Norman Lott is pretty much the opposite of that. So they have like these really good complements sort of all over this defensive line. You know, even with Jerry Tillery, who's going to be able to come in, play some really good run defense, he'll probably be a more direct substitution for Mike Pennell, while Omar Lott will sort of have his role in pass rushing situations. But really, that's what the defensive line is in general. It's this group of like a lot of interchangeable players with similar skill sets, complementary skill sets that Steve Spagnuolo can sort of rotate in and out and play his hot hand, but he's got so many different options where pretty much everyone's going to be fresh at all times. The only one who doesn't fall into that category is Chris Jones, who's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the entire league. It's pretty much him, Dexter Lawrence, and those two pretty much run the show from an interior defensive lineman perspective in the NFL the last couple of seasons. You know, he was number 2 in pass rush win rate amongst interior defensive linemen with 6 sacks last year, 74 pressures, and he's getting double teamed every time. Because they don't have like these high-end pass rushers on the rest of the defensive line, offenses have been relatively comfortable, you know, going man-on-man, one-on-one with everyone else except Chris Jones, and sort of leaving their double team onto him, leaving for a triple team even from a running back perspective, leaving him in the backfield to help out with the interior A-gap to B-gap protection that Chris Jones would be able to disrupt. He's a special guy. He's a special player, and he produces. And for a guy who faces that kind of offensive dedication, you know, doubles and triple teams, for him to still produce at the level that he produces is just, it shows how exceptional he is as a player. And even from a run defense perspective, he's still up there with some of the best in the entire league. You know, a 3% missed tackle rate is just a phenomenal number to put out for an interior defensive lineman. That means he's constantly making the right decisions, and when he gets his hands on guys, he's getting his hands on guys with really great technique and making sure he brings them to the ground. And that is a huge asset to have, especially in short yardage situations, and especially in this division where they have made this shift to be much more of a run-first division, especially with the Raiders and the Chargers. So he's going to face a lot of this work where he's going to need to make smart decisions in gap discipline and make smart decisions and fast decisions and be a sure tackler on guys like Dobbins and Marion Hampton and Najee Harris and Ashton Genty and all these guys that he's going to be facing who are going to be attempting to run the ball straight at his face. So they're going to test him, and he's going to need to pass these tests facing these double teams and triple teams this season. And as the main guy, who's probably the only 3-down guy on the entire defensive line, he's going to have to, you know, mix and match with a lot of different skill sets, with guys who do a lot of things differently, with guys who are good at one thing in particular and maybe not so good at something else. And he's going to have to basically be a quarterback out there. He's basically got to be Patrick Mahomes with that receiver room. He's going to have to be that with this defensive line. And, you know, he's a great asset for the rest of the players to have. He's going to elevate the players around him by giving them so many more opportunities. So if these other guys around him start to develop and things start to click for them, then that takes the entire defense to a completely other level from the front four perspective. I still think that because He's the only star they have. That is what leads to them having the 19th ranked pass rush, 17th ranked run defense. Sort of like this upper bottom of the league, like right in that middle tier of the league quality, which for what they have going on at the second level and then there on the back end, this group is actually relatively complementary to that, and they're going to be provided a lot of opportunities to develop and execute because of what they got going on behind them and outside of them. So here we are with the linebackers, and they got 3 really solid linebackers here. You know, 9th in pass coverage, 3rd in run defense, one of the best, if not the best overall linebacking group in the league, especially because so few have the ability to have 3 guys in the linebackers. We've covered a lot of teams that have 2 really good linebackers, but we've never really got to a team that has 3 like this. You know, Drew Tranquil's there. He's going to be like this 3rd guy who's going to be able to mix and match in here with all 3 of these guys. They're going to have a nice, they're going to have a nice base formation out of the 4-3. They're going to have a really nice, 2-man linebacker group where they're going to be able to mix and match these guys because they're all really good at these different aspects. The best one is Leo Chanel, who I loved that pick when they made it. His rookie year, he kind of was what he was. And then last year, in all aspects of the game, he was just really good. He was really smart in zone coverage. He was a really sure tackler. He just did a really good job of attacking the ball. Only gave up 93 yards in receptions on 13 catches. So he was doing a great job of keeping everything in front of him. He was attacking downhill with great instincts and great anticipation. So he was just doing everything right. He didn't have any interceptions or anything like that, which who cares? He's a linebacker. He just performed really well. Now, he wasn't like the best coverage guy in the world, but where he did execute well was in the run game. His gap discipline was phenomenal. His communication out there, his anticipation, his identification of where the offensive line was going and where those gaps were going to pop up and how he could stay on the back hip of the running back and able to bring him down. He did all those things really, really well last season. And he's going to get all the opportunities in the world in this group. It could be like a situation where it's like 40% here, 40% there, 40%, split the way they split these snaps up amongst them. Then you got Nick Bolton, who's like the super athlete of the group. He's like the all-around athlete who is going to give you like big splash plays. That's why he's able to have 3 pass breakups and an interception. But he's also going to give up 44 catches and over 400 yards. He's going to blitz pretty good. He's going to come up big in some stop situations, in those short yardage situations, those 3rd down run situations. He's going to manipulate, the blockers on the offensive line to open up opportunities for himself really well. His athleticism and his quickness allows him to fire into those gaps and close the distance really quickly. So that's what really helps him on those certain short situations. The missed tackle rate is the one that just makes you want to scream because he does border almost a 15% missed tackle rate, which for a linebacker is just unacceptable. And that's why his run grade is only 75, because he does overplay his hand sometimes. I talk about how great his athleticism is, how much of an asset it is. It also can be a detriment to him at times where he's overplaying a little bit, or he underplays it. He gives his athleticism a little too much credit, or he gives it not enough and ends up, he gets caught and then big plays ensue, or he gives up first down, et cetera, et cetera. So he, at this stage in his career, can he get around that, or is that just the player that he is and you sort of take the good with the bad? I do wonder what Spagnuolo's approach is to that this upcoming season. Because then you have Drew Tranquil, who's sort of the opposite of Bolton, where he is he's more of a patient player, which ends up hurting him in the run game because it makes him basically incapable of making big plays in run defense. But it allows him to play with anticipation as a zone coverage guy in those hook middle zones. So it's sort of like it's another double-edged sword there, where I think that's why they can complement each other so well. They did bring in Jeffrey Bassa, the rookie linebacker, who I think is going to be a good linebacker for them. good part of the rotation on special teams, especially. But from a health perspective, having these three great linebackers, you have guys who fill like traditional linebacker positions really well here also. So who the green dot's going to be, I do think it, as far as I know, it would be Nick Bolton still. But I think as the season progresses, I think the linebacker, Leo Chanel, is going to be the one that you see playing a majority of the snaps in all situations. Because I think his skill set is just has much more variety to it. It's a much safer, higher ceiling. Wow, voice cracked. Higher ceiling than what you have, say, with Nick Bolton or Drew Tranquill. Now we got this defensive back room, and what a group it is. They're number 5 for me in coverage, 11th against the run. It's a great high upside, lots of variety, a really healthy rotation. Everyone can do everything. They even signed Christian Fulton, who can come in and he's like the 4th best corner on the team, which is just crazy to me. Chamari Connor is sort of like this mix and match safety / corner for them. But it starts with Trent McDuffie, who, I mean, what a player, right? 51 catches given up, less than 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, an 87.4 passer rating when targeted. And he plays with such physicality and such anticipation. He's so good in zone coverage. He closes gaps. He baits the quarterback. He baits the receivers. He just gets into the right spot at the right time every single time. It's one of the few great zone corners in the league that is locked down on his side of the field. Usually that designation falls to a guy in man coverage. Now, the zone converts to man at random times and in certain situations, and when it does, he still plays great ball. When it's straight up man coverage, he doesn't quite have the speed and the athleticism to keep up with some of the better wide receivers that are in the league, some of the faster ones in the league. But when he's able to come up, he's able to play physical at the line of scrimmage and all that, you're hard-pressed to find anyone better than him. He's just a superstar in this league. They really nailed his pick. And he has great versatility to play in the slot as well. He's sort of branched out to being more of an outside corner, but playing in the nickels where he's really comfortable. So he sort of has taken up the mantle that we're seeing Jalen Ramsey sort of exit at this stage in his career, where Jalen Ramsey was like this really physical, great cornerback who was an outside guy but did a lot of work in the nickel and in the slot. I think Trent McDuffie has sort of now slid into that role as being that super versatile physical corner in the league. And he's got a great complement next to him too in Jalen Watson, who's really the opposite of him, who's a amazing man coverage corner and not so great in zone. It's sort of the opposite. But he plays such great man coverage without taking like those ticky-tacky penalties. He only took 2 penalties last year. And now as he gets more playing time, as he steps into more of the spotlight here, no touchdowns given up, 4 pass breakups. You're going to see a snap count get closer to 500. We'll see what that looks like from a production standpoint. But when you have a guy who can play great man coverage opposite a corner who nobody wants to throw at, it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for Jalen Watson to become like this Trevon Diggs, Deron Bland level playmaker on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to open up those opportunities for him. So I'm really anticipating that happening. And then you got Joshua Williams, who's a really great complement to them as well. Christian Fulton slides in there. So you got 4 starting caliber corners out here that you're going to be able to throw out there in all different kinds of packages and all different stages. You're going to be able to kick Trent McDuffie into the slot while Christian Fulton plays on the outside. There's going to be so many different opportunities where now when you play against no matter what team you're playing against, you're going to be able to match up against their wide receiver room every single time. Because if they're a much more slot dedicated team, then you have Trent McDuffie who can slide in. Christian Fulton or Joshua Williams goes and plays on the outside. And that's sort of how you end up running the defense from a corner perspective. If it's much more of an outside dominant group, then you have the buys to do that as well. And then maybe Chamari Connor steps in those situations when you might need a more physical guy to come and play in the slot on the tight ends, for example. But even on the back end, you got Jaden Hicks, who last year played pretty well when given the opportunity, had about 300 snaps, did great in pass coverage. Only 11 catches given up, 120 yards, took 1 penalty, 3 interceptions. So just had a really good season considering the snap count. So we're going to see that snap count significantly increase this year with a full healthy season ahead of him. I really like what he's going to bring to this group, being able to, have that versatility, the way that we sort of see guys like Xavier McKinney have, where he's going to be able to play that deep free safety role. He's going to come up and play some box safety. I do anticipate him playing a lot more free safety just because you do have Chamari Connor. You do have Brian Cook, who's like really physical, really good in the run game. You have Mike Edwards, the veteran presence in there. Another guy really good in the run game, can come up, play some more box safety for you. And none of them really have the coverage ability that Hicks has. So that's why I just kind of like him, settling into being like that deep center fielder. For lack of a better term, and sort of navigating the sideline to sideline deep areas. And you can play matchups if you want to play some too high safety. You can play some matchups there where you can have a nice rotation with Connor and Brian Cook as the second safety. Or you can play some 3 safety sets like you see in Baltimore. And I think that Spagnuolo, just having so many bodies in the secondary, it does open up the defensive playbook so much. And being able to play those matchups on the back end is going to really help for what you're going to be lacking from your defensive line, particularly from the edge room maybe early on in the season. And it's going to allow those guys more opportunities to create chaos in the backfield, because it's going to be so difficult for these offenses to really execute quickly. There's going to be a lot more holding of the football by quarterbacks when you play Kansas City because of how good this group is and because of how physical this group can play. You're going to see blitzes with press coverage and all that. So it's going to be very difficult to get the ball out quickly if your guys can't win right off the line of scrimmage. And they have all the bodies in the world here where it's going to be next to impossible to win immediately off the line of scrimmage. So this is where everything with this defense sort of comes together to create a real problem for opposing offenses. So overall, it is my second ranked off defense in the entire league. Best defensive coordinator, 8th against the pass, 7th against the run. And imagine what they'll look like if they get a breakout star other than Chris Jones on that defensive line. Taking a look at their schedule, they're projected to have 11.5 wins, and I actually have it down as a push here, where I'm not so sure, because for my projections, I have 7 guaranteed wins for them this year. The Giants on the road, Jacksonville on the road, they get Vegas, Indy, and Houston at home, and then they play Dallas and Tennessee on the road. So there's their 7 wins. Now, unfortunately, they get Philadelphia, they get Baltimore, they get Detroit, they get Washington. Luckily, they're all at home. But then they get Buffalo on the road. They have to play the Chargers twice. They have to play the Broncos twice. It's a tougher schedule than I think people give them credit for here. So, from my projections, I got them at 11 wins-ish. Like, they might have 11 wins in here. I don't know that they're going to have 12. They could. They could if the Chargers and the Broncos aren't as good as I'm anticipating them being. Then sure. If the Raiders are significantly worse, then they get an extra win there at the end of the year. But man, like that first half of the season, it's not an easy one. It's pretty difficult. They get kind of lucky here landing Tennessee and Indianapolis and Jacksonville, playing that division. But this is a tougher schedule than people give credit for. So I wouldn't bet on it. I mean, I'm not saying they're not going to make the playoffs or anything. but I'm not going to say that that this group is going to just take over and with how tough their division is, just be a 12-13 win football team either. So they're sitting here being like, okay, the schedule dictates they're probably going to be the 4th or they'll be the 5th seed, maybe. So it's tough. It's a tough haul, which is incredibly odd to say for a team that comes in ranked 5th for me with the best head coach, the 2nd best defense in the entire league. They have the 17th offense, but man, that schedule is deceiving. It comes in 11th, but it's deceivingly harder than that. And there it is, my number 5 team in my 2025 NFL Deep Dive Series, the Kansas City Chiefs. Swipe that comment section over, hit the hype button if it's there, if the beta testing is allowing you to do so. Hit the thumbs up button as well. Subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of the future videos. Go watch some of the other videos on this channel, and I will see you guys with my number 4 video at this point next time, probably soon. Bye.